Boardroom Bound, Episode 42, How Self-Branding Can Empower Your Board Success with Lauren Davis.
If you connect and promote the people that you are putting into your intelligent network on LinkedIn, you're going to grow your influence and your leadership tenfold.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Boardroom Bound. My name is Alexander Lowry, and this is the podcast dedicated to intentional leadership in the boardroom. My goal is to give new and aspiring directors the tips, tactics, and strategies necessary to transform your confidence and build a successful career as a board director. Quick reminder, you can get all of today's show notes at podcast.gordon.edu. In today's show, we'll be speaking with Lauren Davis, who is a social media expert. And to be fair, she's also been someone who's been coaching me. So if that gives you a sense of how good she is, the fact that I've gone from where I was before to where I am now. And she recognized that a lot of people are intimidated and frustrated by trying to highlight their brand effectively. And that's what Lauren does. She cuts through the noise and she makes it work. And what she's going to do is spend a little bit of time on the four main channels that people think about. LinkedIn is clearly the prominent one for most of us here. Insta is probably the one that most of us enjoy. There's also Twitter and there's Facebook. We're going to talk through some of the best practice strategies, ways to stand out, how you should be focusing on building that brand because you are a personal brand. If you are or want to be a board director, that is what represents you. That is what people will see. That's what they will think about. That's how you can drive some influence. So this is incredibly relevant and important for all of us, whether you like social media or not. And so I am excited to bring you Lauren Davis and all the creative insights and what she has been teaching me, and we'll share those with you today. Let's jump into the podcast. Lauren Davis, welcome to the Boardroom Bound podcast.
I'm so excited to be here, Alexander. Thank you so much.
Well, this is fun for me because you and I have been, this is kind of weird, like internet friends for a while now, but this is like almost face to face. I feel like this is the next level in the relationship. So I feel like I've been studying at your feet for, I don't know, it's almost like 6 months now, and watching your social media expertise, learning your branding perspective and all that good guidance. And you've probably seen I've been slowly getting better. You know, I'm a slow study in some of these things, but starting to get better. You were very kind to say before the show started that we're getting in the right direction. So you're doing great. I'm not cutting off my head anymore in photos. That's a good thing. So I'm excited to share this with our audience because if our audience is new and aspiring directors, social media, whether you like it or not, is going to be part of your brand. It's literally part of your image that's out there, and you have so much you can coach us on and guide us. And we'll talk about a couple different ranges about how we go about it. But just before we dive into that, let's just sort of set the scene of your expertise and how you got to where you are today. I mean, Lauren Davis Creative is a really cool name, and it gives us an idea of exactly what it does. But what does that mean, Lauren Davis Creative?
Oh, wow. My history is a little different, I feel, than most people. And how I got into this space is very interesting to me, at least. And I started this whole journey when I was about 19 years old. I started a very niche business with my boyfriend then, my husband now. And I was 19, he was 25. We had no idea how to run a business, but it was a brick and mortar business. It was a record store and gift boutique. And at that time, there was no one doing social media. There was no careers paths built around social media or marketing online in that space. Online marketing was really kind of brought down to, banner ads on websites. That was online marketing at the time. And so I, in effort to just honestly pull one or two people through the door, I got our business online. I started doing marketing. I started, built MySpace. Back in the day it was MySpace, built Twitter. I got on LinkedIn. I did anything possible to get our business online and to just audit our presence online. So that way we could see how people were connecting to our business, what they thought our business was, what they didn't know about our business. We tried to just connect all of those dots for people in the community, for relationships. And as I was doing that, and as I was building business cards, flyers, coupons, stuff like that, I realized that I was really passionate about it. And so I ended up going back to school to learn more about graphic design, learn more about marketing, And I found this natural ability in the PR, marketing, and business space that I didn't know I even had my whole life. And then all of a sudden, all of these things in my life started to make sense. All the lemonade stands I had as a child, all the dog walking and babysitting and businesses I was running from the time I was 8 years old up until I was 19. They all started making sense through this marketing landscape. And so that's really how I got started. I started my own business, Lauren Davis Creative, in 2010 after I saw this huge need for especially small businesses, personal brands, solopreneurs needing help really putting their name out there and them just feeling super overwhelmed by it all. And I found that I had this passion for trying to make it easier on them and really diving deep into what makes them unique and what makes them passionate about their businesses and bringing that out to the forefront through local businesses, through solopreneurs, personal brands. And it really fueled me. So that's kind of where I started Lauren Davis Creative, the journey. And here I am, 2019, and I'm doing it and I love it every day.
And so this is relevant for our audience because Lauren does this professionally for a living where she's, for some people, taking on what they do for their social media and runs it for them. Others coaching and guiding and developing them. And you heard a bit about me where she's been doing that for me. And for anyone who wants to pivot and become a board director, for example, or has recently started and perhaps wants the next role, you're a personal brand business to some extent. You are an individual, but people will be going out, they'll be Googling you, they'll be looking for you, and they'll be wanting to see what you're doing. And not only can you be proactive in terms of positioning their mind, but it's also reactive of once they've found, say, that CV that comes across their desk, they're going to go look you up on wherever their social platform is, and they're going to want to see what you're talking about. And are you talking about your dog, or are you talking about the scandals in the boardroom and how they could be fixed? And so Lauren is going to be able to give us a lot of tips and guidance today, probably somewhat for the newbies who are thinking, okay, I've never been on Insta before. Do I need to be, and how do I do it? Versus maybe I've been posting for forever on Facebook about such and such, but maybe I need to change that now and be different. And LinkedIn is the platform that's most relevant for people here because everyone is a business professional. What do we need to do there? How do you be most effective? Should it just be your resume? Should it be something different? There's so much to cover. Lauren, how do we start this?
Oh, wow. Okay. So sometimes I go speak to different high school students here in my hometown. I love volunteering in the public schools. And a lot of times they have me come in and talk to their business class. And the first thing I tell them is, do you think you have a personal brand? And they're like, what is that? What do you think what is that? And I was like, like the Kardashians, I try to relate it to students in a way that they would understand. And they're like, oh yes, personal brand. Totally got it now. But then what I say is, do you know that each of you have a personal brand? It starts the minute that you're online. So if you have any online presence that people could look up and see, you have started creating this personal brand. And not only that, but it goes farther than that. It's who you are, what people say about you when you're not in the room, how people talk about you, how people relate to you. All of that stuff ties into your personal brand. So when you want to bring that online and you want to bring that to your social media platforms, your social media presence, you want to think about it the same way you're thinking of real life. How are people going to talk about you when you're not in the room? How are people going to view your profile if you're not there to explain it? So as that goes, on LinkedIn or on Instagram, on Twitter, Facebook, leadership and success on every single platform in social media and in person begins with the ability to create relationships. Would you say that's true?
Oh, no question about it. If you think about this audience, networking is essential, right? That's the maybe 2/3 of the way boards roles are filled is through networking. And it's, how can you be proactive and thoughtful about it? And perhaps in some ways, not only that you're finding people you want to connect with, but if you've built your profile in such a way that they'd see the value they add, maybe they're connecting with you, which would be the sort of the Valhalla, right?
Exactly. So if you want to create relationships in order to be looked at as a leader and to be looked at as successful, you just apply the same principles that you do in real life. So you create great relationships with people, you promote your friends, you talk about things that you're passionate about that make a difference to you. I think it might have been Mike Kim that said something like, if you're passionate about something, absolutely no one can compete with your passion. they can compete with all the other things, but they can't compete with your passion. And so if you're talking about your passion, you're building these relationships, there's no way that you can't stand out. But I do have some really tactical tips about how to stand out on LinkedIn as well.
And let's think about that, right? Because the guidance you just gave, I think most of our audience had said, I get the Facebook or the Insta version of what Lauren just said. That seems normal, right? You're talking about what you're passionate about, what you're posting about. LinkedIn, a little more stuffy, a little more formal for most people, a little more business suit and tie version versus, say, Insta might be on the weekend and casual. But all of these are really important. And I think in general, the guidance you give, Lauren, someone for a business is think about where your typical customer avatar is. That's where you're going to go find them. That's your first platform. For most of the people listening to this podcast, the primary platform is LinkedIn. That's where all business people are. People have different ways of doing it. So I think that's a great place to start. So how should someone think about their LinkedIn profile?
Okay, so if you were going to a networking event in real life and you were making connections with people, and it was a business-centered networking event, you would still want to build those relationships afterwards. You would still, whether that's a business card, whether you connect through email right after, you would still want to have some back and forth. You would want to connect the dots for them after that networking event is over. So that's, even though Instagram might be a little more lighthearted and Facebook might be a little bit more family and lighthearted there, LinkedIn is the same way as attending a networking event and shaking someone's hand and following up and being a person that they want to connect to and want to recommend later. So there are a few tactical tips, like I said, but one thing that I learned from one of my great friends, his name is Bob Gentle, and he has a great podcast called The Gravity Podcast. It's in the UK. I believe he's from Aberdeen, but he is always trending on LinkedIn. Like all of his posts and his articles are always trending on LinkedIn. And so I asked him once, I was like, if you had to give one tip that you said would be the tip that people need to know about how to get seen on LinkedIn, he said, the number one thing is to make sure that your profile is complete. So LinkedIn even goes to the length of showing you if your profile is complete. If you log in, you're looking at your profile, it says you still need to complete these steps. It seems like a no-brainer, right?
Yeah.
Make sure your profile is complete. However, the LinkedIn algorithm actually values people who have a complete profile. So your stuff, your messages, your posts, your articles, your likes, all of your activity actually has a chance of being seen 40% more if your profile is complete.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then something to note also is that only 51% of members on LinkedIn have completed their profile. So you're already going to be standing out if you just simply complete your profile.
All right.
And Bob also said, you make sure you use all 2,000 characters inside your about section. LinkedIn also favors that. So make sure that all of your stuff is super filled out, very optimized. And by that, I mean, claim your URL. Make sure that your name is in your URL. Make sure your industry and location are showing. Make sure there's an up-to-date current position. Maybe include 2 or more past positions. Make sure your education and your skills are updated. Make sure that you have a good profile picture. And one thing I learned recently is this really interesting website called Photo Feeler.
Oh, I love that site. Oh, it's fantastic.
Great, right? So you can put your profile photo into Photo Feeler, and you get points based on how many photos you've rated in a business sense. And then once you do that, you have the ability to have your photo rated, and it's anonymous, and they weed out bad feedback. So you're really getting the feedback that actually matters. And it shows you what people think of your photo. Is it professional enough? Is it that you have influence? So I recommend using that website to make sure you have a great photo feeler profile photo on your website.
And Photo Feeler is great because it's free and you can use it really well. It rates you on 3 categories. So are you approachable, are you friendly, and are you of influence, I believe are the 3. And it's fascinating. So I put what I thought were my best 2 photos up, and I know they're the best 2 because my wife told me and she was a model, so she knows what she's talking about. So we put the 2 up. The only main difference really is I'm in glasses in one versus the other. And they scored almost identical on 2 categories and just a little bit different on the other one. I thought, wow, the people have voted. So you've got hundreds of votes. The algorithm screens it out. And it's such a simple way because that photo, let's say you're using the same one across all of your social media, that's what everybody sees. That's what they associate it. That's a brand that you're building, right?
Exactly. And people, whether we like it or not, they have that first impression on you based on your photo. And so you want to have a profile photo that says what you think you want it to say. And PhotoFeel is a great resource, and it sounds so scary. As someone who, I would never be okay with that if someone was just like, go stick your photo in this website and let people judge you. But it was really beneficial to me. So PhotoFeeler is awesome. And then you need to have at least 50 connections in order to be part of this LinkedIn All-Star rating.
And I would actually say it's 500 is the magic number because it stops counting publicly on your profile at 500. It says 500 plus. And I think there's a view among sort of people that use LinkedIn a lot. If you're not getting at least 500, you're not really playing the game.
Right. And so a lot of people, you will say you want 500, but I'm thinking, if someone is just starting out and they need a small win, they need at least 50 connections to have that all-star rating.
Got it.
So 500 will definitely optimize you for more views, but having at least 50 is what you need. So what I'm trying to say is it's not enough to simply just have a LinkedIn profile up. You need to have some kind of activity. You need to have at least 50. Try to get to that 500 mark for sure, but you need to at least have 50 connections, and you want to try to be building somewhat of an intelligent network. And what I mean by intelligent is not just based on how smart people are, but building networks in the industries you want to serve in. So building a network around people that you know would be benefited by your content and that you also like sharing and being part of their content.
I think that makes sense. And let's talk about sort of outreach to people, right? Because you can send a connection request to anybody. And you can also send a connection request with text in it. And it works a little bit differently if you're doing the mobile version versus in front of your computer. But I know as a recipient, it makes a world of difference. Even if it's generic text, if there's something in there, so it comes across that there's some sort of reason and background you're reaching out. There's some people that accept everybody, and that's fine. And there's a lot of other people who felt like, I only want someone in my network if I want them in my network. So they need that context.
Right. I personally think there's nothing worse than accepting a request and then also having my inbox flooded with, here's my thing, please download like a sales pitch right after I connect them. I almost immediately go back to their profile and disconnect.
Wow.
And so I think that you want to play everything in relationship building in real life and online is about playing the slow game, playing a long game, and being genuine, right? But we hear that all the time. It's such a buzzword. Be authentic, be genuine. So what that means to me is if you met somebody at a networking event, you went and shook hands with them, and then they tried to sell you something as you guys were shaking hands, you'd probably be pretty off put by that. So why would you do that online?
Mm-hmm.
That's my idea about outreach. But when I was talking about building an intelligent network, I would say my number one strategy is this. Most people are trying to promote and market themselves on LinkedIn. You'll see it all the time. It's very common theme. They're trying to promote themselves. They're trying to get you to, purchase their product, purchase their webinar. Here is a strategy that will set you apart. If you connect and promote the people that you are putting into your intelligent network on LinkedIn, you're going to grow your influence and your leadership tenfold, because not only are you making your connections look really good to each other, but that sets you apart as the person who connected you. And then also being a connector not only helps you in that way, but it also helps you share both of the audiences of the person that you're connecting. So if you are helping people get to know each other in LinkedIn, or if you're helping by sharing people who are actually in your friendship network, your intelligent network that you've made connections with, sharing their content with your own personal thoughts on it, it sets you apart as someone who knows people, someone who brings people together, and then you get to share their audiences as well. Because when when you have posted about somebody on LinkedIn, they're going to see it. They're going to comment on your post and say thank you, or give some kind of personal comment back to you. The LinkedIn algorithm definitely favors likes, it favors comments, it favors activity a lot and engagement. So then once that person who you've shared their content likes your article or your post, it's going to show up on their profile. This all kind of ties back together of building your own influence. And if you build your influence as being someone who's a connector, that's extremely valuable to people. And you have to have like this relationship mindset, you know?
And let's sort of summarize this at a 30,000 foot view for our audience, because if there's someone who's maybe hasn't been on LinkedIn before, or hasn't just really used it very well, they've got a profile that's a bit dormant. What we're hearing from Lauren is this is an essential thing to do. The algorithm's going to know, the machine is behind the scenes and know whether you've filled it out, whether you've filled it out well, whether you're connecting with people, then how you're using it. So LinkedIn, we've seen, wants to be sticky. It's been adding video because photo doesn't feel the same way. They want you on their site longer. They want people to be engaged. They want you liking. They want you commenting, seeing things. And Lauren, I assume the algorithm also rewards people who are regular users. Is that right?
Definitely. You want to be very consistent. So you want to have and value. One is not enough. You need to be consistent with your content. You need to also bring value to the table, but that doesn't mean that every single post has to have value in the way that you are teaching them something necessarily. So, I think on Mike's episode, which came out this year, he said something about education, inspiration, and entertainment. Those are the three content lanes that people take. So, on Instagram too, there's like education, inspiration, or entertainment. On LinkedIn, on Facebook, it's like across all platforms. You're one of those three.
So you're right, Lauren. When Mike Kim joined, I think it was episode 28, he was explaining that whatever social media platform you're on, each one has different parts of these three levels. One's a primary, one's a secondary, and you might even not have the tertiary. So on LinkedIn, right, the entertainment, not really as important as it is on, say, a Facebook sort of situation.
Correct. So on LinkedIn, it's mostly an educational platform, but it can also be an inspirational platform. And inspiration doesn't always have to be the same way that you're inspired by a quote about life. It could be a quote about mindset. It could be different content lanes that express either education or inspiration. And I think that the strategy is that you are providing value in different ways. You want people to read longer posts. You want them to also see your shorter posts. And you want to provide value, but value doesn't always have to mean, 3 bullet points to doing this better. It could just be, value could just be connecting two people together, or saying, hey, I noticed that you posted about this, and this person I know recently said something to me about this too, and I just think that you guys are really on the right track. It could be as simple as that, because then you're connecting the dots of two more valuable assets.
So I like that, Lauren. And as we think about the LinkedIn to Twitter comparison, Twitter is semi-businessy for some people. You got athletes and all sorts of different famous people on there just having fun and saying random stuff. But there are some business people who will put ideas out there. So it could be something about their company. It could be ideas to improve. So for example, every Thursday, I've got my Thursday Thoughts. Sometimes it's deep inspirational. Sometimes it's quoting another business executive. You don't see that as much on LinkedIn. That's not as typical inspirational stuff on LinkedIn, right? We were just transitioning to the different sort of segments. Help us understand how you use Twitter, how to think about it, especially someone who is sort of building their personal brand to become a board director. How should they use the Twitter platform?
Okay, so on Twitter, I also know this great person who is just killing it on Twitter. He is doing so well, and his name is Chris Strub. And every time I look at his posts, they're going crazy. And I asked him once also, like, what is the secret? You know, you can tell that I'm a person who's always digging deeper and trying to learn what people are doing. And I'm very relational, so I really enjoy making those personal connections with people. And so during a conversation once, I said, you know, what is your number one tip on Twitter? Like, if you had to give someone just one Spitfire tip. And he said that he uses this awesome tool called Tweetonomy. And so I've been using it ever since. It's really, really neat. And it gives you a bunch of different analytics on how you use Twitter. So there's this strategy and this tool to measure how it works. And it shows you like how you're replying, what kind of mentions you're getting, what your top mentions were, what your top retweets were. And one thing that he said is a Spitfire tip is that you want to make sure that 40% of your tweets are replies, 40% or more. So, and then you want to be extremely intentional with the top 10 people that you engage with. So while Twitter, you know, while we were talking about what content you put out, that is important, of course. You want to inspire people, you want to educate people. And on Twitter, you can sometimes have some entertainment too. A lot of Twitter is based on funny jokes or funny, you know, pieces of your personality that could be retweeted that other people relate to and want to also express themselves. However, using a tool like Tweetonomy or just being more aware of who you are intentionally working with and talking to and replying to the most is going to get you much better results. For him, it has resulted in better speaking opportunities, more paid work, and being noticed by the right people in his industry. So just make sure that you're very intentionally connecting with at least 10 people on Twitter that are very influential in your industry.
Fascinating. All right, so then we've covered LinkedIn, we've done some Twitter. Now, Insta, I know this is your favorite, and I would argue this is the one I blow up all the time. But this is something where some people love it, some people don't really use it, but it's a tool that has so much that we don't really understand. Help us wrap our minds around Insta and how we should be best using that.
So Instagram for the personal brand is a really interesting place. Instagram is full of kids, it's full of adults, it's full of professionals, it's full of entrepreneurs, it's full of entertainment. So there's a lot of different lanes you can go in, right? And so when you're building your personal brand, you want to have a balance between elevating your successes in your personal brand and elevating what you do and showing your passions, while also educating people and being a leader. And remember what I said at the beginning is that, you know, leadership and success on every platform begins with the ability to create relationships. So if you're talking about personal brands, let's say from the mindset of, if people are looking through your profile to see if you would be a good fit for them, are you talking about things that you're passionate about? And do those passions line up with a position in the industry that you'd like to serve? Do you have engagement? Not only are you just posting about this blindly, but are people paying attention to you? And that fits across all industries. That fits across if people are looking for a job in a certain place, or if they are looking to fill a board role, or even when people are trying to be influencers on Instagram and get paid to talk about different products. What these companies are doing is they're going inside your Instagram and looking through your photos. It doesn't matter how many followers you have. It doesn't matter how many likes you get on a post. What actually matters is if people are engaging with you, if they're commenting on your pictures, if they're sharing your stuff, if they are having conversations with you. And those conversations and those relationships are what people want to see. That's how they know you're a great leader. So if people are looking to you for advice, for value, if they're communicating with you, they're not just hovering over your page and liking. Because to be honest, there are so many fake likes out there, so many fake followers out there. And I just want everyone to breathe a sigh of relief that doesn't actually matter that much at all. What matters is your audience that you are connected with connecting back with you and engaging with you. If you're just posting and ghosting, posting all the time and then not engaging and no one's connecting with you, then it might as well have just been a robot posting. It's not you.
Well, let me think about for our audience how we can relate this back a little bit, because I think, imagine for all of us, LinkedIn is easy to wrap our head around, right? We get how that's a businessy tool. Insta can be a bit of a business tool. So for myself, I never used it until about 2 years ago when I was told I have to be on that for the brand. It's very important. So I reluctantly have been on there. Help us understand the top of the page. So compared to LinkedIn, you talked about like 2,000 characters that you can use in your about section. You have nothing anywhere near that to use at the top of your Insta profile, but still you got to get across a lot of information very clearly. And I know you've got a clever way that you do it in yours, and Mike Kim does in his, and other people as well. How do you recommend people structure that and use that tiny space?
Right. It's very important to optimize your Instagram bio. And this is why. When someone comes to your page for the first time, they're going to look at your bio one time, and then they're probably never going to look at it again. Mm-hmm. They're going to decide whether they follow you or whether they pay attention to you right away. Even if they follow you, they'll probably still never look at your bio again unless you point them towards it. So that being said, you have one chance to make that impression. Great. Make sure you have a great profile picture. Then make sure what you can do to help with SEO and to build more of a presence in search on Instagram is add a characteristic to your name on Instagram. So for you, Alexander, you wrote board member. Mm-hmm. So that's great, because if people are searching for board members within the search function of Instagram, they might be able to come across you easier. Mine says personal branding. Sometimes I change it up depending on what I am working towards, what kind of goals I have at the moment. Sometimes I change it up because I do kind of work through different categories in my business. And then what you have in the bio is a few different characteristics that outline who you are. I personally have a couple emojis or icons and a few different descriptive words. And like it looks like
you love your Myers-Briggs profile, your Enneagram, right? But yes, that's very you, right? So you're being true to yourself and your passions are coming out.
Yes. And so that is something. I'm obviously very relational. I like building relationships. I love understanding personalities. And so that's something that really ties into my brand. That doesn't necessarily mean that everyone should put those types of hashtags in their profile, but your bio and your profile bio is the only place where you can have an active link inside Instagram. So you need to be aware of that. So if you're promoting a certain episode, if you're promoting yourself, you might want to have a website for your personal brand. You might want to have a link to a podcast interview that you were on that shows the influence you're building as a potential board seat. You might want to have a hashtag in there that really is a community that you might be participating in on Instagram, and we can talk about that as well. But the whole idea is that when someone looks you up online, what are they going to see first in that bio? What are they going to apply to what industry you're trying to serve? So if you were trying to serve a specific industry, but your bio had no words in it, which I see all the time, just no description at all. Huh. And then they look through your profile and they see, like you said, pictures of puppy dogs or, I don't know, just some kind of disjointed profile. They might skip you. They might just see that you don't pay attention to your social media. But if you can optimize it and you can make it something where people come to your profile and they see immediately what your passion is and what you're interested in, it doesn't mean that every single post has to be business related or has to be industry specific. You can definitely mix things in. I definitely have pictures of my dog in my profile. I'm serious. But that being said, when people come to my profile, there's no doubt that they can see what I do, what my interests are, and what kind of people I'm trying to serve in my community and across the U.S.
And I think let's pick up on that point, because it's partly about helping your audience help you by giving them what they need to know, but doing it in a clever and fun way. So for example, I do a lot of public speaking, a bunch of keynote speeches about corporate governance, board roles. So basically every so often, if you think about it as the scrolling, right? So maybe one screenshot is 9 photos, hopefully at least every 9, but certainly not too much more than that. I'd like to have a photo of me at some event where I'm speaking, and then maybe there's a little bit of a story about it in the caption, because I want that out there as part of my brand. This is what I do. I need people to see that and understand it. And I imagine in the same way, I'm sure the posts about your dog are tied back in a caption in some way back into something that you're doing. So it's probably being clever in a fun way about this, because this is very different from LinkedIn. This is less formal and stuffy, right?
Very much so. And the profiles that you'll see on Instagram, where it's all very queued up and very curated and extremely, extremely professional, that's not really what people are going to Instagram for. They're kind of going there for a slightly more inside look at your life. They want to see a little bit more behind the scenes. They want to know more about what you're doing to lead up to a specific job you have to do, or maybe even in the stories, Alexander, how you feel before you speak. Maybe that 5 minutes before you speak or after you speak, putting that in your stories could help people really connect. I felt like that before when I've spoken before, or I always wondered what it would be like to go on stage and speak to a big audience about something. I'm going to follow this guy because I'm really interested in what he's doing.
I like that. I'm going to give that a shot. That's cool.
No problem.
Well, Lauren, let's also compare this a bit with Facebook, because we know Facebook owns Insta, and there's a lot of similarities between them, but still very different, partly for historical reasons. But I'm sure many people are also on Facebook. And I think one of the things that blew my mind about 10 years ago when someone said, no, but you can use Facebook, not forget about business profile. You can use it as a professional platform as well, and you can change how you do it there. Related, but different. Give us just a couple of sort of thoughts on Facebook and how we should play there.
Sure. So there's a fine line on a personal Facebook page that you can walk in order to bring your professional presence there as well. You cannot simply use your personal profile on Facebook to promote business things or things related to your industry all the time. Facebook will eventually catch on and they'll say, you need to start a business page. So there's that option. You can have a business page. There's another option. You can have your professional profile where you do talk about industry specific things once in a while, but you also give some personal stuff within your Facebook, because that's what Facebook intends the profiles to be. They want it to be personal. They don't want it to be a privacy situation where businesses are looking into the lives of their customers. And that doesn't necessarily apply to your your board seats, but still they want people to use Facebook as a social platform in the personal Facebook space, and then use it as a business platform in the business Facebook space. So that being said, I do also connect with people on Facebook on my personal profile in a business setting. When I go to events, when I go to conferences, I shake people's hands, we connect. I usually try to get them to connect with me on Instagram, but if they don't have an Instagram, we connect on Facebook. And I'm a big proponent of utilizing lists, because if you don't want people to be able to see all of your history from like the last 10 years and, your pictures of you on your family vacation 15 years ago, that is fine. And so you can use these things called friends lists, where when somebody requests your friendship, you accept it, and then you can add them to a list that you show them only certain things. So I have certain lists. I have lists for some coaching groups that I coach in. So all of the people from that coaching group are in a list. Then I have lists for people that I've met through specific events like social media marketing world. I have lists for people in my local business nonprofit that I started. I put them all on the list. So that way I can even target my posts towards individual lists that I'm talking to. And then I make sure that people that I am just connecting with on an acquaintance level and not on a super personal level, they only see my public posts and they don't see my very private posts. And that's one way that I would recommend networking on Facebook. But as far as content goes, you do want to have a mix of different types of content on your personal Facebook page. Otherwise, Facebook will definitely ask you to make a business profile, and that's fair. That's how it should work, because Facebook is meant to be a social platform. It's meant to be for your friends, your real friends, and so you build those relationships. You build them into real friends, and then you can use your Facebook personal profile or your business page.
Well, Lauren, I feel like we have just done a mad dash through a ton of different social media, and it's an amazing, for someone probably sort of mind-blowing of like, oh my gosh, I've got to do all of this stuff. you gave great advice recently where I was on a coaching call with you, and I'm going to paraphrase and feel free to say it in a better way. Pick one. Pick maybe the one that's best for your business purposes, and I would argue that's probably LinkedIn for most people here, and do that one really well. And in another one, you're going to have fun, and you're going to learn, and you're going to grow and develop, whichever, say, of the other three that might be. Can you give that advice to our audience in a smarter way?
Yes, I always say choose one and one. So choose whenever businesses come to me, they're overwhelmed. They think I have to be on every platform. Or when people who are building their personal brands come to me and they are stressed out about it, I say choose one platform where your audience is and get to know that platform extremely well. So make sure that you know where your audience is, you know where they're connecting with you. And don't just choose one where you think you want your audience to be, but choose the one where your audience is. And then you choose one that you have so much fun on. And that's the other one. That's the one that's going to make social media fun for you. And when you can repurpose between those two platforms, you're going to have a lot more fun with social media, and you're going to let it stop stressing you out.
Well, that is great. Well, Lauren, I think this is great advice for all of us, because as we're building a brand, and if you want to be a director, you have a brand, you want to manage it, you would like to be proactive on it. You've given us great advice to go forward and do this, but we've really only scratched the surface. And you do this professionally. You coach so many people. You've been trying very hard to get me up to a certain standard. I'm sure many of our audience would like to know more about your journey, to stay in touch, to follow you, potentially be using some of your services. What's the best way for them to do that? And I'm guessing the hint is Insta. That's your favorite, right?
So LinkedIn is one of my favorites to hang out on that is more audience-based. I get leads from LinkedIn. I get lots of messages from LinkedIn, and people discover my profile there because I have amazing, amazing recommendations, which I'm so honored to have, which I've never really asked for. And then my platform where I have tons of fun, and the one that I just love experimenting with and having the most fun with, is Instagram. So either of those two is great. I'm under Lauren Vonnegut Davis on LinkedIn, and I'm under L Davis Creative on Instagram.
And I will make sure we have links to those in the show notes. And Lauren, thank you so much for imparting advice to us today. I imagine our audience is all over the spectrum, from people at the very beginning to people that were just looking for some of those next stage tips. And you gave some really killer ones today. So thank you for joining the Boardroom Bound podcast and giving those insights to help all of our audience to be more boardroom bound.
Thank you so much for having me. This is such a blast.
That's it for this episode of Boardroom Bound. I really enjoyed chatting with Lauren Davis. I will admit that I have not always been the most enthusiastic or feeling confident about my social media skills. And Lauren I've been learning from her coaching and her guidance, and I've picked up so much from her. And I don't think I fully realized the power of even LinkedIn from where I'd started before as looking at it as a resume, but it's actually a branding site as well. So Lauren has given all of us tips that we can implement immediately to improve how we position ourselves, how we build our brand, and ways that we can take it forward. Now, if you head over to podcast.gordon.edu, you can get resources to what we talked about today, including a very special piece that Lauren has prepared for us that has a lot of the tips that she talked about today, and that's a downloadable piece over at podcast.gordon.edu. And of course, the Boardroom Bound team and I are just so proud to be your go-to podcast for all things that connect, prepare, and empower you to land a board seat. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss any of the high-quality content we bring to you every Wednesday. And thanks for joining me today. I can't wait to share more stories and strategies from brilliant business minds with you again next week. Remember to keep tuning in to be Boardroom Bound.